She was my poor woman, yet the richest miracle my life ever held. The world saw her empty hands, but I saw a heart that carried galaxies of love. She walked beside me, with no gold in her pockets, no luxury in her shadow, yet every step she took felt heavier than crowns, because she carried sacrifice, like it was her second breath. Her silence spoke louder than the noise of wealthy halls. Her patience outshone diamonds. Her tired smile was more valuable than everything the world worships. She chose love, even when life offered her nothing. She chose loyalty, even when pain was constant. She chose me, when walking away would have been easier. While others measured life in money and status, she measured it in warmth, care, and staying. She stayed when storms were loud, when futures were uncertain, when hope felt fragile. Her poverty was visible, but her strength was eternal. She fed souls while starving herself. She healed hearts while carrying her own wounds. They called her poor, but they never saw how rich the world became, because she existed in it. She owned nothing, yet she owned my forever. She lived a life the world never applauded, yet every breath she took was a quiet act of bravery. Her days were stitched with struggle, her nights heavy with unspoken prayers, but still, she woke up choosing love over complaint, patience over bitterness. She carried poverty like a shadow that never left, yet she never allowed it to darken her heart. Even when her hands were empty, they were always open, ready to give, ready to hold, ready to protect. I watched her break silently, then gather herself again, without asking anyone to notice the cracks. She learned how to smile with tired eyes, how to comfort others while her own heart ached, how to keep going when stopping would have made sense. She didn't dream of palaces. She dreamed of peace. She didn't crave jewels. She craved stability. She didn't ask life for ease. She only asked for strength to endure it. Her love was not poetic. It was practical. It showed up on hard days, stayed during hopeless nights, and remained steady when everything else failed. She loved in actions, in sacrifice, in staying. The world judged her by what she lacked, but I measured her by what she gave, and in that measure, she was limitless. She was poor in wealth, but she was rich in every way that mattered. She didn't just walk beside me. She carried parts of me when I was too weak to carry myself. She stood beside me when my world was falling apart, not with promises of miracles, but with the quiet strength of someone who refuses to leave. Her presence was not loud, yet it was powerful enough to silence my fears. She knew hunger, knew uncertainty, knew the weight of tomorrow before it even arrived. Still, she shared her last hope, like it was endless, like pain had never taught her to be selfish. I saw her hide her tears behind small smiles, saw her swallow her worries, so mine wouldn't grow heavier. She learned the art of suffering silently, of loving loudly through actions, rather than words. She was tired in ways sleep could never fix. Her exhaustion lived deep in her bones, etched by years of sacrifice. Yet every morning, she chose to rise again, to face the same harsh world, with the same soft heart. She never asked life to be fair to her. She only asked herself to remain kind, even when kindness cost her everything. She believed love was not about being celebrated, but about being constant. The world saw a poor woman, I saw a warrior, wrapped in humility. They saw her limitations. I saw her limitless capacity to endure, to forgive, to stay. She didn't just survive poverty. She transformed it into a language of compassion. She turned lack into loyalty, hardship into devotion. And in that transformation, she became more than my partner. She became my shelter, my silent prayer, my forever treasure that no wealth could ever replace. She walked through life as if pain had memorized her footsteps. Every road she took was uneven, every turn demanding more strength than she ever had the right to be asked for. Yet she walked anyway, head lowered, heart steady, love intact. Her poverty was not a moment. It was a lifetime companion. It sat beside her at meals, slept next to her at night, followed her into every tomorrow. Still, she never allowed it to poison her spirit. She starved quietly, so others could feel full. She wore the same worries repeatedly, so others could feel light. She carried responsibilities that were never hers alone, burdens passed down without permission. I watched her accept them without protest, without bitterness, as if endurance itself was written into her soul. Her love was not fragile. It was forged in hardship, tempered by disappointment, strengthened by staying when leaving would have been easier. She loved like someone who knew love might be all she would ever own. At night, when the world finally slept, she allowed herself silence. Not rest, just silence. A space where her tears could fall without witnesses, where her fears could breathe without judgment. By morning, she folded herself back together and returned to being strong. She was never praised for the wars she survived. No one counted the sacrifices she made daily. No one crowned her for choosing patience over anger, hope over despair. Yet she kept choosing them anyway. The world measured her worth by what she lacked. I measured her worth by how much she carried without breaking. They saw a poor woman. I saw a soul rich enough to sustain generations. She was my poor woman, not because she lacked money, but because she gave everything away. And in that giving, she became my forever. A treasure no fortune could ever equal, no loss could ever erase. She never complained about the life she was handed. No protest escaped her lips. No bitterness settled in her voice. She accepted hardship like an old acquaintance, learned its language, and lived with it without letting it steal her humanity. Her days were long, stretching endlessly with responsibility. Her nights were heavier, filled with thoughts. She never spoke aloud. I saw her sit in silence, staring into nothing, as if calculating how much more she could give without disappearing completely. She carried love like a sacred duty, not the kind that asks for return, not the kind that keeps score, but the kind that empties itself just to keep others whole. She gave pieces of herself away until very little remained, and still she kept giving. Her strength was quiet, almost invisible. It didn't announce itself, didn't demand recognition. It showed up every morning when she rose tired, every evening when she returned exhausted, and every moment in between when she chose patience over collapse. I watched her age, not by years, but by sacrifices. Each line on her face told a story of endurance. Each sigh a memory of something she survived alone. Time was not gentle with her, yet she never grew cruel. She believed love was meant to be proven, not promised. That loyalty was shown by staying when it hurt, by holding on when letting go would ease the pain. She stayed. Again and again, the world passed her by without noticing the miracle she was. They saw poverty. They saw struggle. They saw limits. I saw a woman who carried the weight of many lives on her shoulders and still found space in her heart to love me. She was my poor woman, in the language of the world, but in the language of the soul. She was abundance itself, a living proof that the deepest love is born not from comfort, but from sacrifice, and that the greatest treasures are often the ones the world never learns to value. She learned early that life would not soften for her, that mercy would be something she must create with her own hands, that warmth would come only from what she was willing to give. So she became gentle in a world that trained people to harden. Her hands tell stories. Her mouth never dared to speak. Hands that trembled with fatigue, yet never refused responsibility. Hands that wiped tears before anyone could see them fall. Hands that fed dreams while starving their own. She carried fear silently, folded neatly inside her chest. Fear of tomorrow. Fear of not being enough. Fear of losing what little she had. Yet she never allowed fear to become her identity. She walked forward, even when her heart begged her to rest. I saw her smile on days that bruised her soul, a smile not born from happiness, but from determination. She smiled so others could breathe easier, so the weight of her suffering would not become someone else's burden. She believed pain was something to be endured privately, that tears were sacred and should fall in solitude. So she cried where no one watched, where walls alone knew her weakness, where the night became her witness, and silence her only comfort. Time took much from her, but never her dignity. Even when life stripped her bare, she stood tall in spirit. Even when hope thinned, she stitched it back together with faith and patience. She did not dream loudly. Her dreams were small, practical, built around survival. Yet within those modest hopes lived a courage that could outshine 1,000 grand ambitions. The world never thanked her. It never applauded her sacrifices. It never paused to understand what it cost her to remain kind. But I know, I remember, I carry her story like a sacred inheritance. She was not rich in possession, nor blessed with ease, but she owned something rare, a heart that refused to break, despite every reason to do so. And in loving me, she proved once again that the strongest souls are often hidden inside the most overlooked lives. She aged quietly, as if time itself was something she did not wish to disturb. Years passed over her, like unannounced storms, each leaving a mark, each taking something small, yet precious away. Her hair surrendered to silver before she was ready. Her eyes learned the weight of remembering too much. But her heart refused to grow old. It kept loving with the innocence of someone who had never been wounded, even though it carried a lifetime of scars. She became an expert at endurance, not the loud kind that demands praise, but the quiet kind that survives unnoticed, the kind that wakes up tired, yet still chooses responsibility, the kind that keeps promises, even when hope feels fragile. She understood loss in its many forms: loss of comfort, loss of dreams, loss of herself. Yet she never allowed loss to turn her bitter. She held on to compassion like a final lifeline, as if kindness was the last thing the world could not take from her. I watched her choose love over rest, sacrifice over ease, silence over complaint. She believed strength meant not explaining your pain, meant carrying on without asking why. Her presence was calm, yet powerful, a quiet gravity that pulled broken souls toward safety. People leaned on her without realizing she herself was already leaning on faith alone. She had moments where her strength trembled, nights when loneliness sat beside her like an unwanted guest. But even then, she did not curse her fate. She whispered prayers instead, soft ones, tired ones, filled with hope she could barely feel, but refused to abandon. She taught me that wealth is not counted in coins, but in how much pain you can endure without losing your humanity. That love is not loud, but consistent. That real courage often looks like exhaustion, wearing a gentle smile. The world saw an aging woman. I saw a survivor, a silent warrior, who fought every day just to keep love alive. And in her tired eyes, I learned that greatness does not always stand tall. Sometimes it bends, sometimes it aches, but it never disappears. She carried her life like a fragile vessel, careful not to spill the little piece she had left. Every step she took was measured by responsibility, every breath tied to someone else's needs before her own. She learned early that the world does not pause for tired hearts, so she kept moving, even when her body begged for rest, even when her soul felt heavy with years that refused to loosen their grip. Her hands told stories her lips never spoke, hands that had worked until they forgot softness, hands that had wiped tears before they ever wiped their own, hands that had given so much they no longer remembered what receiving felt like. She was never celebrated. No applause followed her sacrifices. No medals honored her endurance. Yet she continued, as if doing the right thing was reason enough, as if love itself was the only reward she needed. There were dreams she folded away quietly, like old letters, too painful to reread. Dreams of ease, dreams of being chosen, dreams of a life where she did not have to be strong every single day. Still, she never grew cruel. Pain passed through her, but it did not settle. Hardship knocked at her door, but it never claimed her spirit. She protected her tenderness in a world that tried relentlessly to harden her. Her silence was misunderstood. People assumed weakness where there was wisdom. They mistook her patience for surrender. They never realized that staying gentle in a harsh world is the bravest rebellion of all. She knew how to love without guarantees, how to give without keeping score, how to stand alone without announcing her loneliness. She trusted that God saw what people overlooked. I learned from her that dignity does not shout, that true love does not demand recognition, that some of the strongest souls walk quietly among us, carrying invisible weights with extraordinary grace. If the world ever wonders what strength looks like, it should look at her, not standing tall on podiums, but standing firm in storms. Time never asked her if she was ready. It simply moved forward, leaving its marks on her face, on her bones, on the quiet spaces inside her heart. She aged without permission, but she never aged without meaning. Every wrinkle became a memory. Every sigh carried a chapter. Her body changed, yet her soul stayed alert, watching, learning, enduring. She outlived many versions of herself. The hopeful girl, the silent wife, the tired mother, the woman who once believed life would be kinder if she tried harder. She buried each version gently and kept walking. Loneliness sat beside her often, not as a stranger, but as a familiar guest. Still, she did not let it poison her heart. She spoke to God in whispers, in pauses, in tears that fell only when no one was watching. There were days when even breathing felt heavy, days when the future looked empty, and the past too loud. Yet she woke up anyway, not because she was fearless, but because responsibility never gave her the luxury of giving up. She taught me that survival is not loud. It doesn't scream victory. It simply continues, quietly, persistently, with faith stitched into every broken place. She never asked life to be fair. She only asked for strength to endure it. And somehow, that strength arrived, not as miracles, but as patience, as restraint, as an unbreakable will to keep her heart clean. People passed by her story without reading it. They saw her age, but not her battles. They noticed her silence, but not her wisdom. They counted her losses, but never her courage. I see it all now. The years she sacrificed, the love she gave freely, the dignity she protected, even when the world gave her no reason to. If survival had a face, it would look like hers. Soft, weathered, honest, still standing, still believing, still choosing goodness, after a lifetime of reasons not to. In the end, nothing made her extraordinary to the world. No headlines carried her name. No applause followed her footsteps. Yet to me, she became the definition of what real wealth looks like. She owned no land, but she gave shelter to souls. She held no gold, yet her hands fed hope. She wore no crown, but her patience ruled generations. What she lacked in possessions, she returned in love. Pure, deliberate, unmeasured, life tested her without mercy. It took her youth quietly, her dreams slowly, her strength piece by piece. Still, she refused to let bitterness survive inside her. She chose grace, even when anger felt justified. I watched her forgive what should never have happened. I watched her stay gentle in a world that rewarded cruelty. She understood something many never learn, that carrying hatred only deepens the wound. Her love was never loud. It did not beg for attention. It showed up daily, in small sacrifices, in silent prayers, in tired smiles meant to protect others from worry. That kind of love does not fade with age. Now time stands behind her, unable to erase what she has already become. A living testimony, a quiet victory, a woman who lost so much, yet never lost herself. When people speak of success, they mention money, power, comfort. But when I speak of her, I speak of courage, of dignity, of a heart that remained clean. After walking through fire, she may be poor to the world. She may be invisible in crowds. But to my soul, she is priceless. She is proof that love does not need luxury, and strength does not need applause. If my voice ever reaches far, this is what I want remembered. That somewhere, a woman lived quietly, loved deeply, and changed a life, without ever knowing how powerful she truly was. If her story touched your heart, leave a comment and let her strength live on through your words.